It is fair to say Guatemala exists in a particularly vulnerable region of the world, very prone to natural hazards. Situated in the Central American region, we are sitting on a confluence of three tectonic plates, 30 volcanoes scattered in the southwest region. We are hit by earthquakes and hurricanes, and extreme weather brings periods of drought and conversely periods of flooding. The disaster in August 2019 is still fresh in our minds. 86.3 millimeters of rain falling in 24 hours led to flooding and landslides affecting over 25,000 people, destroying infrastructure, homes, and injuring 15. There are dozens more events like this occurring in the past decade, and there are no signs of this pattern changing. This disaster was of course the result of heavy rainfall. However, social, economic, and environmental factors are exacerbating the risk. The large agriculture industry that contributes 23% to GDP, employs 50% of the labour force, and makes up 75% of export earnings. To continue the growth of this industry, land is required, leading to deforestation. The mountainous terrain of the country, coupled with the removal of trees and vegetation, is decreasing the ability for the land to cope with increased rainfall. The steep slopes, now bare of trees, provide no defence and allow the rain for a quick and easy route down the hillside. Having trees would also bind the soil, stabilising the ground, absorb the rain, intercept precipitation, and defend the towns and villages from flooding. Alas, with no trees, this is not the case, and rain, soil and sediment can be washed downhill, creating landslides. By 2050, weather across the globe will become more extreme. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change predicts global warming is highly likely to reach a further 1.5 degrees Celsius between 2030 and 2050. There will be more frequent, heavier rainfall events, coupled with periods of extreme drought. For Guatemala, this will cause the ground to be parched during periods of drought. However, climate change also brings unpredictable weather. Heavy rain falling on parched lands will increase surface runoff, creating potential disastrous situations once again falling on the country. The long-term risks of changes to the climate can increase ocean acidity, sea level rise, species loss and extinction, increased mean land temperature, and threats to food security and water supply. This would create great problems for the country's agriculture industry, which much of the country is heavily invested in. Poverty levels in the country have in fact increased from 43.4% to 48.8% between 2008 and 2014 respectively. This change accounts for an extra 2 million people to have fallen below the poverty line. Poverty rates are expected to increase further between 2019 and 2021, making people more vulnerable to hazards. Those in poverty are at higher risk to be affected by hazards, lacking resources to protect and support themselves and their families through the hazardous times. The impact to agriculture, which supports much of the population, may increase those in poverty further. Guatemala cannot afford to not take action to prevent these hazards turning into disasters again. The 2050 projected population is to increase to 27 million people. This will lay a huge strain on the country's resources, the economy, and you, the government. Even if global warming is kept below 1.5 degrees Celsius, by 2050 the pressure to Guatemala will impact the country, in particular the country's poorest, where people's preparedness and resilience to hazards will be compromised. To combat the changing environment and increased risk, we recommend increasing the government's budget. This will be difficult to achieve due to the economic situation, however foreign aid could be an avenue to explore in order to raise these funds. With increased funding, the National Coordinator for Risk Reduction to Disasters could enable the agency to broaden the educational aspects of their activities through literacy courses, with the goal of bringing the population up to speed with flood management techniques and emergency procedures like evacuation routes. Upland basin management could be improved, using agroforestry which would increase the interception and moisture absorption through roots, reducing runoff and the risk of landslide. By investing in GIS and mapping techniques, Conred would be able to identify areas most at risk due to landscape features. They can then put in place the necessary protections such as slope vegetation or retaining walls to prevent landslides. Improving building standards and adapting housing designs, which may include raising homes to avoid floodwaters, would provide more protection for the citizens. Early warning systems for flood events would give the population time to safely evacuate or prepare defences like barriers. Although this disaster did not cause physical injury to many people, it caused great disruption and affected thousands. Events like this will happen again, so measures must be taken to protect lives and allow the country to develop and not be hindered by these hazardous events.